Hello, and welcome. I'm so glad you're here. Before we begin tonight's journey together, take a moment to get comfortable. Adjust your pillows, settle into your favorite sleeping position, and if you'd like to support this channel, please consider subscribing and clicking the notification bell. It truly helps us create more peaceful content for you each week. Now, take a deep breath in and let it go. Tonight, I'm going to tell you a story, a gentle story about a place where time moves slowly, where worries dissolve like morning mist, and where peace settles over everything like a soft blanket. This is a story designed just for you, to help you release the day and drift into restful, restorative sleep. You don't need to follow every word. In fact, if your mind wanders or you find yourself floating away, that's perfectly wonderful. That's exactly what's meant to happen. So close your eyes if you haven't already, and let's begin our journey to Maple Lane. There's a neighborhood that exists in that magical space between waking and dreaming, a place where the streetlights glow with a honey-colored warmth, and the trees whisper secrets to the night breeze. This neighborhood is called Maple Lane, and tonight you're going to discover it through the eyes of Emma, a woman who stumbled upon it quite by accident on an evening very much like this one. Emma had been driving for hours, though she couldn't quite remember why she'd started driving in the first place. Sometimes we do that, don't we? We move through our days on autopilot, propelled by momentum rather than intention. But as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of lavender and rose gold, Emma noticed a turn she'd never seen before. A small wooden sign, weathered and charming, simply read, "Maple Lane, drive slowly, dream gently." Something about those words made her smile. Drive slowly, dream gently. When was the last time she'd done either? So she turned onto the lane, and everything changed. The road itself seemed to invite slowness. It curved gently, bordered by towering maple trees whose leaves caught the fading sunlight and transformed it into something magical, a dance of gold and amber and deepest green. The pavement was smooth and dark, recently rained upon, and it reflected the first stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky above. Emma rolled down her window, and the evening air tumbled in, carrying with it the scent of wet earth, blooming jasmine, and something else, something indefinable that smelled like peace itself, if peace had a fragrance. As Emma drove slowly down Maple Lane, she began to notice the houses. Each one was different, yet they all shared a quality of timelessness, as if they'd grown organically from the earth rather than being built. There were cottages with climbing roses, Victorian homes with wraparound porches, modern structures with walls of glass that glowed softly from within. But despite their differences, each home radiated the same sense of tranquility. In one front yard, an elderly man was watering his garden with an old copper watering can. He moved with the kind of unhurried grace that comes only with age and wisdom. The water arced through the air in silver streams, catching the last rays of sunlight. He looked up as Emma passed and offered her a gentle wave. Not the quick, perfunctory wave we often give to strangers, but a slow, deliberate gesture that seemed to say, "Welcome. You're safe here. You can rest now." Emma waved back, surprised by the tightness that suddenly appeared in her throat. When was the last time someone had made her feel genuinely welcomed? When was the last time she'd felt safe enough to truly rest? She continued down the lane, driving so slowly now that her car was barely moving. There was no reason to hurry. In fact, the very idea of hurrying seemed absurd here, like running through a cathedral or shouting in a library. This was a place that demanded slowness, that invited you to sink into the present moment, like sinking into a warm bath. A woman sat on her porch swing, a sleeping cat curled in her lap, a book resting forgotten in her hands as she watched the evening unfold. Children drew pictures with colored chalk on their driveway, their creations glowing in the dusk, a rainbow, a sun, a house with a smiling face. A couple walked hand in hand down the sidewalk, their footsteps synchronized, their conversation consisting more of comfortable silence than words. Emma felt something loosening in her chest, some knot she hadn't realized she'd been carrying. It was as if Maple Lane existed outside of ordinary time, outside of the relentless forward motion of regular life. Here there were no deadlines, no obligations, no rushing from one thing to the next. Here there was only now, this perfect, peaceful now. The streetlights began to flicker on, one by one, like stars descending to earth. But these weren't harsh, bright lights. They glowed with a soft, golden luminescence that seemed to embrace rather than illuminate, creating pools of gentle radiance beneath each lamppost. Moths danced in the light, and somewhere in the distance, wind chimes sang their sleepy song. Emma noticed a small bookshop on the corner, its windows glowing invitingly. A hand-painted sign hung above the door. Henderson's Books and Tea, open when we're here. She smiled at that. Of course, why would a place like this bother with rigid hours? Without quite deciding to, Emma found herself parking her car and walking toward the shop. The door was heavy oak, with a brass handle worn smooth by countless hands. When she pushed it open, a bell chimed. Not the harsh jangle of most shop bells, but a soft, musical tone that seemed to welcome her in a whisper. The interior was exactly what you might imagine in your most comforting dreams. Floor-to-ceiling shelves crowded with books, their spines creating a rainbow of colors and textures. Overstuffed armchairs positioned near learning lamps, each with a small table holding a teacup and saucer. The scent of old paper, jasmine tea, and beeswax candles, and everywhere the sense of sanctuary. "Good evening," came a gentle voice. An elderly man emerged from behind a shelf, his silver hair slightly disheveled, reading glasses perched on his nose, a cardigan with leather elbow patches completing the perfect picture of the perfect bookshop proprietor. "I'm Mr. Henderson. You must be new to Maple Lane." It wasn't a question, but Emma nodded anyway. "I just found it, by accident, I think." Mr. Henderson's eyes crinkled with a knowing smile. "Ah, but there are no accidents on Maple Lane. People find this place exactly when they need it most." He gestured to the shop around them. "Tea? I've just brewed a pot of chamomile lavender." Before Emma could respond, she was seated in a velvet armchair the color of midnight blue, a delicate teacup warming her hands. The tea tasted like moonlight and honey, if such things had a taste. Mr. Henderson settled into the chair across from her, his own cup steaming gently. "The thing about Maple Lane," he said, as if continuing a conversation they'd been having for years, "is that it's always been here and it will always be here. But not everyone can find it. Only those who need respite, only those whose souls are calling out for peace." Emma took another sip of tea, feeling its warmth spread through her body like a gentle tide. "I didn't know I was looking for anything." "The best discoveries are the ones we don't know we're seeking," Mr. Henderson replied. "Tell me, when did you last have a full night's sleep?" The question should have felt intrusive, but it didn't. Emma thought about it, counting back the days, then weeks, then months. I'm not sure. A long time." "And when did you last feel truly at peace?" Even longer, she thought. Years, perhaps. Had she ever? Mr. Henderson nodded, as if she'd spoken aloud. That's why you're here, my dear. Maple Lane has a way of finding the weary, the restless, the ones who've forgotten how to be still. Would you like to stay for a while? Take a walk? We have a beautiful evening ahead." Emma left her teacup on the side table. Mr. Henderson assured her he'd take care of it, and stepped back out into the evening. The air had cooled to that perfect temperature, neither warm nor cold, just the gentle embrace of a summer night settling in. The sky above had deepened to indigo, and stars were emerging like silver seeds scattered across velvet. She began walking, with no destination in mind, simply following the sidewalk wherever it led. The maple trees created a canopy overhead, their leaves rustling with a sound like distant ocean waves. Beneath their feet, the sidewalk was smooth and even, easy to walk on, even as darkness gathered. Every house she passed seemed to tell a story. In one window, she could see a family gathered around a dinner table, candlelight dancing on their faces as they shared their meal. No phones, no television, just conversation and presence. In another, someone practiced piano, not with fierce concentration of achievement, but with the gentle exploration of enjoyment. The notes drifted into the street, imperfect and beautiful. A garden gate stood open, revealing a path that led to a small fountain. Emma couldn't resist entering. The garden was a masterpiece of tranquility. Roses and lavender, hydrangeas and night-blooming jasmine. The fountain at its center was a simple stone bowl, where water bubbled up and spilled over in a continuous, soothing rhythm. She sat on a bench beside it, listening to the water's song, feeling the day's tension continuing to dissolve. How long she sat there, she couldn't say. Time felt different here, malleable, unimportant. The moon had risen, a perfect silver disk that painted everything in shades of pearl and shadow. Fireflies emerged, blinking their gentle codes in the darkness, like earth-bound stars. A cat appeared, as cats do, materializing from the shadows with the confidence of one who knows they're exactly where they belong. It was a large tabby with green eyes that reflected the moonlight. It regarded Emma for a moment, then leapt gracefully onto the bench beside her, settling against her thigh with a purr that vibrated through her body like a healing frequency. Emma stroked its soft fur, and the cat's purr intensified. She felt tears prickling at her eyes, though she couldn't have said why. Perhaps it was the kindness of this creature, who asked nothing of her except this moment of connection. Perhaps it was the sheer beauty of the night, or perhaps it was simply relief. Relief at finding a place where she could finally stop running. Eventually, Emma continued her walk, leaving the garden and its fountain behind. The cat followed for a while, then darted off on some feline errand of its own. Emma smiled, feeling oddly honored to have been chosen for even those few minutes of companionship. The lane curved and opened into a small park. In its center was a pond, its surface perfectly still, reflecting the moon with such clarity that it looked as if there were two moons, one above and one below. Willow trees draped their branches over the water's edge, creating natural curtains of green. A wooden dock extended into the pond, and Emma found herself drawn to it. Her footsteps on the dock were hollow, gentle sounds that seemed to be absorbed by the night rather than echoing. At the dock's end she sat down, letting her legs dangle over the edge. The water below was dark and mysterious, but not frightening. It seemed to hold secrets, but peaceful ones. Stories of all the people who had sat here before her, all the worries that had been whispered to the night and carried away on the breeze. The moon's reflection wavered slightly with the movement of the water. Fish occasionally broke the surface, creating concentric circles that expanded and disappeared. Somewhere a night bird called, its voice soft and questioning. The air smelled of fresh water and water lilies, earth and growing things. Emma lay back on the dock, looking up at the stars. She tried to remember the last time she'd done this, simply laid down and looked at the sky. As a child, perhaps? She couldn't remember. The stars looked different here on Maple Lane, brighter somehow, more numerous, as if the usual veil between Earth and cosmos had grown thin, allowing the full glory of the universe to shine through. She found the Big Dipper, the only constellation she could reliably identify. From there, her eyes traced imaginary lines between stars, creating her own constellations. That one looked like a cat, that one a book, that one a teacup. The stars seemed to pulse gently, breathing light into the darkness. A meteor streaked across the sky, a quick, brilliant scratch of light against the dark. Make a wish, she thought automatically, then paused. What did she wish for? World peace felt too grand. Money felt too shallow. Love felt too complicated. What she wished for, she realized, was simply this: more moments like this one, more evenings of perfect peace, more opportunities to remember what it felt like to simply be, without striving, without performing, without the constant pressure of becoming. She made her wish silently, sending it up to the star that had burned across the heavens. And in that moment, lying on a dock, on a pond, on Maple Lane, she felt held by something larger than herself. The earth beneath her, solid and supporting, the air around her, gentle and kind, the sky above her, vast and eternal. She was small, yes, but not insignificant. She was part of this great turning, this cosmic dance, this mysterious unfolding of existence. When Emma finally sat up, she felt different, lighter somehow, as if some burden she hadn't known she was carrying had been set down and left behind. She made her way off the dock and followed a small path that led from the park to what appeared to be a community garden. Even in the moonlight, she could see the careful tending that had gone into this space. Raised beds bursting with vegetables, tomatoes heavy on their vines, beans climbing their trellises, lettuce leaves silvered by moonlight. Herb gardens releasing their fragrance into the night, rosemary and thyme, mint and basil. Flowers planted between the vegetables, creating a tapestry of color even in the darkness. Zinnias and marigolds, cosmos and sunflowers with their heavy heads bowed in sleep. A small greenhouse stood at the garden's edge, its glass panels catching the moonlight. Inside she could see seedlings in trays, plants in various stages of growth, all waiting patiently for morning's light. There was something deeply comforting about this evidence of care, of people working together to nurture living things. A bench sat among the garden beds, and Emma settled onto it, breathing in the mingled scents of earth and green growing things. The night was alive with sound now that she was paying attention. Not the harsh sounds of the city, sirens and traffic and voices raised in argument or urgency, but gentler sounds, natural sounds. The rustle of leaves in the breeze, the distant murmur of the stream that fed the pond, the chirping of crickets in their endless conversation, the occasional hoot of an owl, wise and patient in its tree, the whisper of bat wings as they swooped and dove, catching insects in aerial dances too quick for human eyes to follow. And beneath it all, a deeper sound, the sound of the earth itself, maybe, the low hum of existence, the vibration of life continuing in its patient, persistent way. Plants growing imperceptibly slow, earthworms tunneling through soil, microorganisms breaking down and building up, The great cycle of life and death and life again, playing out in every moment, in every square inch of this garden. Emma lay back on the dock, looking up at the stars. She tried to remember the last time she'd done this, simply laid down and looked at the sky. As a child, perhaps? She couldn't remember. The stars looked different here on Maple Lane, brighter somehow, more numerous, as if the usual veil between Earth and cosmos had grown thin, allowing the full glory of the universe to shine through. She found the Big Dipper, the only constellation she could reliably identify. From there, her eyes traced imaginary lines between stars, creating her own constellations. That one looked like a cat, that one a book, that one a teacup. The stars seemed to pulse gently, breathing light into the darkness. A meteor streaked across the sky, a quick, brilliant scratch of light against the dark. Make a wish, she thought automatically, then paused. What did she wish for? World peace felt too grand. Money felt too shallow. Love felt too complicated. What she wished for, she realized, was simply this: more moments like this one, more evenings of perfect peace, more opportunities to remember what it felt like to simply be, without striving, without performing, without the constant pressure of becoming. As Emma sat in the garden, she became aware of a presence. Not threatening, nothing could feel threatening here on Maple Lane, but definite. Someone else was in the garden. She looked up to see an elderly woman approaching, moving slowly but steadily, a woven basket over her arm. "Oh, I'm sorry," Emma said, starting to stand. "I didn't mean to trespass." "Nonsense," the woman said, her voice warm and rich despite her age. "The garden is for everyone. That's what community means. I'm Margaret. I was just going to cut some lavender to hang in my linen closet. Would you like some? It helps with sleep." "I'm Emma, and yes, I'd love some, thank you." Margaret settled onto the bench beside her, setting down her basket. She pulled out a small pair of pruning shears and began to snip stems of lavender with practiced ease. The scent intensified with each cut, filling the air with its calming fragrance. "You have that look," Margaret said conversationally, not looking at Emma but focusing on her task. "The look of someone who's been carrying the world on their shoulders for too long." Emma laughed, surprised by the sudden tightness in her throat. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to those who've been there themselves," Margaret replied. She held up a bundle of lavender, its purple flowers dark in the moonlight. "We all end up on Maple Lane eventually, if we're lucky. When the weight gets too heavy, when we forget how to breathe properly, when sleep becomes a stranger instead of a friend, that's when the lane appears." "Is it real?" Emma asked, then felt foolish. "I mean, of course it's real. I'm sitting here, but it feels like a dream." The best things exist in that space between dream and reality, don't they? Margaret handed her several bundles of lavender tied with string. Reality is just what we agree upon, after all. And on Maple Lane, we agree that peace is possible. We agree that rest is not a luxury, but a necessity. We agree that there's more to life than the constant striving we're taught to value. She stood, her basket now full of fragrant purple stems. "Put that lavender by your pillow tonight. And Emma, don't be a stranger. Maple Lane is here whenever you need it. Same place, just turn at the sign." Emma watched her go, the woman moving like a benevolent spirit through her garden, pausing here and there to touch a tomato plant or deadhead a flower. The lavender in Emma's hands felt like a promise, a reminder that this place existed, that she could return. The evening had deepened into true night now. The moon was higher in the sky, smaller but brighter. Emma made her way back through the garden, past the pond where the water continued its gentle lapping against the shore, through the park where the willow trees swayed like gentle dancers. She passed Henderson's bookshop. The lights were off now, but she could see a "Come Back Soon" sign hanging in the window. Past the house where children had been drawing with chalk, the pictures still visible on the driveway, glowing softly in the streetlight. Past the cottage with the climbing roses, where now only a single light burned in an upstairs window. Maple Lane had settled into sleep, but it was a peaceful sleep, a safe sleep, the kind of sleep that comes when you know you're protected, when you know that tomorrow will bring the same gentle rhythm as today. Emma reached her car, still parked outside Henderson's shop. She stood beside it for a moment, reluctant to leave, even though she knew she would return. The lavender was still in her hands, its scent rising around her like a benediction. She looked up at the canopy of maple leaves overhead, at the stars beyond them, at the moon presiding over it all with its serene, patient light. She took a deep breath, holding the night inside her lungs for a moment, before releasing it. This place would be here, Margaret had promised. Whenever she needed it, Maple Lane would appear. The thought was comforting beyond measure. Emma opened her car door, placed the lavender carefully on the passenger seat, and settled behind the wheel. But she didn't start the engine yet. She simply sat, looking down the lane one more time, committing it to memory. The curve of the road, the arch of the trees, the golden glow of the streetlights, the houses settling into sleep like children tucking themselves into bed. She thought about Mr. Henderson and his knowing eyes, his warm tea, his gentle wisdom. She thought about Margaret with her basket of lavender and her understanding of weariness. She thought about the cat in the garden, the fish in the pond, the meteor across the sky, the fireflies blinking their patient code in the darkness. All of it felt like a gift, an unexpected gift on a night when she hadn't even known she needed one. Emma finally started her car, the engine purring to life, but she kept the headlights off for a moment longer, wanting to preserve the magic of moonlight. When she did turn them on, the beams seemed softer than usual, as if even they knew to be gentle here on Maple Lane. She drove slowly back the way she'd come, taking her time, savoring every moment. Past the house where the elderly man had been watering his garden, his windows dark now, his rest well-earned. Past the home where children had played, their toys neatly arranged on the porch, waiting for tomorrow's adventures. The lane curved and wound, and Emma followed it peacefully, without urgency, without destination beyond the simple act of moving through this beautiful space. The maple trees whispered their farewells, leaves rustling in a gentle breeze. An owl called from somewhere deep in the branches, its voice a soft question mark against the night. And then, naturally, without fanfare, she found herself back on the main road. Behind her, Maple Lane receded, but not in a sad way, more like it was tucking itself back into its pocket of peace, waiting patiently for the next weary soul who needed respite. Emma drove home, her regular home, with its familiar streets and ordinary traffic lights and everyday houses. But she carried Maple Lane with her, in the lavender on her passenger seat, in the peace that had settled into her bones, in the memory of moonlight on water and stars overhead, and the simple, profound gift of being allowed to rest. When she reached her house, she parked and sat for a moment, holding the lavender to her nose and breathing deeply. The scent filled her, calming and clean and full of promise. She would sleep tonight. She knew it with a certainty she hadn't felt in months. Inside, she went through her bedtime routine with a slowness she'd borrowed from Maple Lane. No rushing, no checking her phone one more time, no letting her mind race ahead to tomorrow's concerns. Just brushing her teeth, washing her face, pulling on soft pajamas, turning down the bed. She placed the lavender on her nightstand, its purple flowers a splash of color in the lamplight. Then she turned off the light and slipped between the cool sheets, letting them settle over her like a blessing. Emma lay in the darkness of her room, but behind her closed eyelids she could still see Maple Lane. The images floated through her mind, gentle and undemanding. The bookshop with its cozy chairs and steaming tea, the garden with its raised beds and careful tending, the pond with its perfect reflection of the moon, the dock where she'd lain beneath the stars, the lavender in Margaret's basket. Her breathing slowed naturally, each exhale releasing a bit more tension, a bit more of the weight she'd been carrying. Her body sank into the mattress, heavy and relaxed, supported and safe. The lavender scent drifted through the room, subtle and soothing. She imagined herself back on Maple Lane, walking slowly beneath the maple trees. Their branches overhead created patterns of shadow and moonlight. Her footsteps were quiet on the sidewalk. No destination, no hurry, just walking, just being. The houses on either side of the lane glowed softly from within, each window a small beacon of warmth and peace. She could see families inside, living their gentle lives, reading books, sipping tea, stroking cats, watching the stars. Simple acts, but sacred in their simplicity. Emma's breathing grew even slower, deeper, her heartbeat steady and calm. Her mind, usually so full of chatter and concern, had grown quiet, not empty, never empty, but spacious, like a room with good acoustics where every thought had room to echo and settle before the next one arrived. Emma walked in her imagination to the pond again, settling on the dock. The water below was dark and peaceful. The moon above was bright and constant. She lay back, feeling the solid wood beneath her, looking up at the stars. They pulsed gently, those stars, breathing light into the darkness, ancient light, light that had traveled for years, for decades, for centuries, just to reach her eyes in this moment. She was connected to them, part of the same universe, made of the same stuff as stars, carbon and nitrogen and oxygen and wonder. A meteor streaked across her inner sky. Another wish, but this time no words, just a feeling. Gratitude, peace, acceptance. All of it compressed into a wordless prayer and sent up to the heavens. Emma felt herself floating, drifting like a leaf on water, not away from herself, but deeper into herself, into that quiet place where sleep lived, that ancient place of rest and restoration, that necessary darkness where the body healed and the mind sorted and the soul remembered what it had forgotten during the day's bright chaos. The boundaries between waking and sleeping had become soft, permeable. Emma existed in both states at once, and in neither. She was aware of her body in the bed, but she was also walking on Maple Lane. She could feel the sheets against her skin, but she could also feel the night air on her face, smell the jasmine and lavender, hear the rustle of leaves and the murmur of water. Time had become irrelevant. She might have been lying there for minutes or hours. It didn't matter. There was nowhere else to be, nothing else to do. Just this gentle drifting, this peaceful surrender to the night. The maple trees on her inner lane had grown taller, their branches reaching up to touch the stars. Or perhaps the stars had descended to meet them. Either way, there was a merging, earth and sky, above and below, inner and outer. All the divisions that seemed so important during waking hours dissolved here, revealing the truth that everything was connected, everything was one. Emma's body growing heavier, sinking deeper into the mattress. Or was she growing lighter, floating up toward the ceiling? Both, perhaps, heavy and light at once, grounded and free, contained and infinite. The lavender scent had woven itself into her breathing, so that every inhale brought calm, every exhale released worry. In and out. Peace in, tension out. Safety in, fear out. Rest in, striving out. The rhythm continued, gentle and inevitable as waves on a shore. In her mind's eye, she saw Margaret in the garden, cutting lavender under the moon. Mr. Henderson in his bookshop, reading by candlelight even though the shop was closed. The elderly man watering his garden, though it was the middle of the night and the plants were sleeping. The cat curled on the bench, purring in its dreams. The fish in the pond, swimming slow circles in the dark water. All of them were part of Maple Lane's dreamscape. All of them were guardians of peace, keepers of the slow rhythm, reminders that there was another way to live, a gentler way, a kinder way, a way that honored rest as much as activity, darkness as much as light, being as much as doing. Emma's thoughts were like clouds now, drifting across the sky of her consciousness. She watched them pass without grasping at them, without trying to hold them or push them away, just watching, just witnessing, a thought about tomorrow, a memory from yesterday, a sensation in her body, a snatch of music, a color, a feeling. All of it arising and passing away like waves on water. None of it permanent, none of it requiring her action or attention, just the natural movement of mind, settling down, settling down, settling down. Emma had almost forgotten where the memory of Maple Lane ended and the dream began. Or perhaps there was no difference. Perhaps Maple Lane had always been a dream, the best kind of dream, the kind that heals and restores and reminds you of what's truly important. She stood now, in her imagination, in her dream, in whatever space she occupied, at the end of Maple Lane. The road curved ahead, disappearing into a soft mist that glowed with moonlight. She didn't know what lay beyond that curve, but she wasn't afraid. She was curious, yes, but in a peaceful way, the kind of curiosity that doesn't demand immediate answers. Behind her, Maple Lane stretched back, each house a constellation of light and warmth, each tree a sentinel of peace, each garden a testament to care and patience and the slow good work of tending growing things. She could stay here, she realized. She could walk this lane forever if she wanted, through all the seasons, summer evenings like this one, warm and jasmine-scented, autumn afternoons when the maples lived up to their name, blazing red and gold and orange, winter nights when snow hushed everything into silence and wood smoke rose from chimneys, spring mornings when every garden burst into bloom and the air filled with birdsong. Or she could walk forward around that curve into the unknown, into sleep, into dreams, into the deep rest her body and soul needed so desperately. Emma chose to walk forward, not away from Maple Lane, but deeper into it, into its heart, into its essence, into the peace it represented. With each step, she felt lighter. The lavender scent surrounded her completely now, a cloud of calm that moved with her. The moonlight grew brighter, softer, warmer. It seemed to come from everywhere at once, from the sky, from the trees, from within her own chest. She realized she was glowing, gently, not with harsh light, but with the same soft radiance as the street lamps on Maple Lane. She was becoming part of this place, or it was becoming part of her, or, and this felt truest, there had never been a separation. She had always been part of this peace. She had just forgotten. The mist welcomed her, wrapping around her like a soft blanket, or like arms, or like the feeling of being deeply, perfectly safe. She felt held, supported, Loved even, though by what or whom she couldn't say. By the universe, maybe, by life itself, by the mysterious force that keeps planets spinning, and hearts beating, and flowers blooming, and people finding their way to places like Maple Lane exactly when they need them most. Emma's breathing had become so slow and deep that each breath seemed to last forever. Inhale, pause, exhale, pause. The spaces between breaths growing longer, quieter, until breath and no breath were the same thing, until breathing and being breathed were indistinguishable. Her body back in the bed had completely relaxed, every muscle loose and heavy, every joint soft and easy, her face smooth and peaceful, her hands open and receptive, her heart beating its steady rhythm, requiring nothing from her, just doing its patient work while she slept. And she was sleeping now, had been for a while perhaps. The boundary had been crossed so gently that there was no moment she could point to and say, "There, that's when it happened." She had simply drifted from one state to another like a boat slipping from shore, so smoothly that the departure went unnoticed. In her dreams, Emma continued to walk on Maple Lane. But the lane was different now, more fluid, more magical. The houses shimmered and changed. One moment a cottage, the next a castle, then a cave, then a garden itself. The maple tree's leaves were all the colors at once, and also no color, and also colors that had no names. She met people she'd known. Her grandmother, who died years ago, sitting on a porch swing with a knowing smile. A childhood friend, laughing about something they'd laughed about decades before. A pet she'd loved, running circles around her feet with eternal youth and joy. But she also met people she'd never seen, strangers who felt like old friends. Each one offered her something, a flower, a stone, a word, a song, a smile. She accepted each gift with gratitude, though they dissolved in her hands like mist, leaving only the feeling of having been blessed. Mr. Henderson appeared, no longer in his bookshop, but walking beside her, his hands clasped behind his back. "Remember," he said, though his lips didn't move, "Maple Lane is not a place you go to. It's a place you carry within you. That's why you can always return." Margaret was there too, still with her basket, though now it overflowed not just with lavender, but with moonlight itself, spilling over the edges in silver streams. "Rest is not an indulgence," she said, her voice coming from everywhere and nowhere. "Rest is your birthright. Don't forget." The cat appeared, large as a lion now, and Emma climbed onto its back. It carried her through the dreamscape with powerful, silent steps. She held onto its soft fur and felt safer than she'd ever felt in her waking life. They reached the pond, but it had become an ocean, vast and gentle, with waves that whispered secrets in a language older than words. Emma slid from the cat's back and walked into the water. It was warm and welcoming, and she realized she could breathe beneath it. She swam down, deeper and deeper, but there was no fear, only curiosity, only peace. At the bottom of the ocean, she found a garden. Anemones waved like flowers in a breeze. Fish swam among them like hummingbirds. And in the center of the garden, a door, rounded, wooden, with a brass handle. She knew this door, had always known it. It was the door to the deepest part of herself, the part that existed before words and would exist after them, the part that was connected to everything, the part that was, in some essential way, everything. Emma opened the door and stepped through. Beyond the door was darkness, but it wasn't frightening. It was the darkness of a womb, of a cocoon, of deep earth where seeds wait patiently to germinate. It was creative darkness, restorative darkness, the darkness necessary for new growth. Emma floated in this darkness, cradled and held. There were no thoughts here, no memories, no plans, no identity even, just being, pure being, consciousness without content, awareness without object. How long she remained in this state she didn't know. Time didn't exist here. But gradually, gently, images began to appear again. Not the vivid dreams of before, but softer impressions, a flicker of light, a whisper of sound, the sensation of sheets against skin, the smell of lavender. She was ascending, slowly, naturally, like a diver rising from depths, moving through layers of sleep, from dreamless to dreaming, from deep to light, from the oceanic back toward the shore. Maple Lane appeared again, bathed now in early morning light, the golden hour when everything glows. The maple trees cast long shadows. Dew sparkled on every leaf, every blade of grass. A bird sang, then another, then a whole chorus. Emma walked back down the lane one last time, saying goodbye to each house, each garden, each familiar landmark. But it wasn't a sad goodbye. It was, until next time, see you soon, thank you. She reached her car, but before she got in, she turned and looked back at the sign. Maple Lane, drive slowly, dream gently. She smiled. She had done both, and she would again. The dream began to fade then, but the feeling remained. The peace, the rest, the reminder that there was a place, both real and imagined, external and internal, discoverable and always present, where she could return whenever the world became too much, whenever she forgot how to breathe, whenever she needed to remember what really mattered. Emma's body, in the bed, stirred slightly, not waking yet, but preparing to wake, moving through the gentle transition from sleep to consciousness. Her breathing shifted, becoming slightly quicker. Her eyelids fluttered. But she didn't wake, not yet. She let herself rest in that liminal space for a while longer, that space between worlds, that space where wisdom lives, that space where healing happens. When she finally did wake, minutes or hours later she couldn't tell, it was with a profound refreshment, as if she'd slept for days, as if every cell in her body had been renewed. She kept her eyes closed for a moment longer, holding on to the dream, the memory, the gift of Maple Lane. The lavender's scent was the first thing she noticed, still there on her nightstand, faithful and constant. She smiled before opening her eyes. When she did open them, the morning light filtering through her curtains looked different, softer, kinder, more beautiful. Emma stretched, luxuriating in the feeling of a rested body. Her mind was clear, calm, ready for the day, but not anxious about it, present in this moment rather than racing ahead or looking back. She would return to Maple Lane, tonight maybe, or tomorrow, or whenever she needed to remember. And she would always need to remember that rest was sacred, that peace was possible, that there was more to life than the endless striving. But for now, she simply lay in her bed, breathing in lavender, grateful for sleep, grateful for dreams, grateful for mysterious lanes that appeared exactly when needed. Outside her window, she heard a bird sing. Inside her chest, something sang back. All was well.
And so we leave Emma here, rested and renewed, carrying Maple Lane in her heart. And we leave you here too, dear listener, hoping you've found your own rest, your own peace, your own reminder that you deserve gentleness and care. May you dream gently, may you wake refreshed, and may you always find your way back to the places, real or imagined, that help you remember your own sacred worth. Sweet dreams. Until next time.